Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on the Positive Tip. I'm Kenny, along with Kenny Squared, and this is our brief opening. Kenny, we talked about Dave Steve last week, and now Bowden Francis kind of gets into that territory a little bit. So Dave Steve had three times where he got to two outs in the ninth inning with a no-hitter, and he lost all three. And on the fourth time, he got the no-hitter. Bowden Francis, this was only 8 days ago. Is it Taylor Ward or Tyler Ward with the Angels? He got to the ninth inning, first batter, hits a home run, ruins a no-hitter. And that time, I think he had 117 pitches. And John Schneider lets him go again yesterday. I think he only had 107 or 108. First batter, he gets two strikes on Lindor, and Lindor hits it out. Is that not crazy that he does that twice within 8 days?
I would love to see if that's ever happened before.
Yeah,
Probably the closest I can think of. I don't know if it was back-to-back starts or not, but I know you Darvish did it like twice within, I think, a year.
that's crazy. And Steve is a little bit worse because it wasn't back to back. He had three within 2 years, but he got all the way to two outs. Francis didn't get an out in the ninth inning, but but both broken up by home runs, just heartbreaking. I mean, he pitched a phenomenal game. And if it was like back in June, I'd have been rooting for him to get the no hitter. But the Mets needed that game. I'm like, please, come on, man. We need, we're getting ready to go into Philadelphia. I mean, come on. Do you know what Gary Cohen's call was when Lindor hit that home run? Have you heard it?
I've not heard it.
All right, brace yourself. He called it Linsanity.
Uh,
Yeah. Uh,
no.
we love Gary Cohen, but I was like, he stole that one a little bit. And his name was Jeremy Lin. His name is Lindor.
But like, Jeremy Lin was like a sensation for like 4 months.
I know.
Francisco Lindor should win the MVP this year. We can talk about that more.
We will talk about it more. One last thing we're going to get into, because you're definitely going to talk about the Yankees, who I think have had a good week. But how's it that Aaron Judge has all of a sudden gone 15 games without a homer?
Um, People blame it on Paw Patrol. I can talk about that more.
All right. You ready to get this going?
Let's go.
All right. This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers. Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, I think there's going to be parts of our show today where we may not live up to that name because we do have some stuff to talk about today. And it may not be all that positive. And so I want to start with week one of the NFL under our belts. And there was some good games, some games that went down to the wire, but games involving the Giants, the Jets, and the Cleveland Browns, not so much. So I want to start first with your Giants. And I'll have to admit, I was going to stay at the Giant game if it was interesting and just kind of go back to the Met game. That would be a secondary thing. I can't do the split screen anymore for some reason. It just, I lose concentration. Uh, but there was just nothing there early that made me want to compel to stay with the Giants. They just, to me, I'll just give my brief commentary. They just didn't seem ready to play on in all facets of the game, but particularly the quarterback, Mr. Daniel Jones. And Sam Darnold, it was exactly the opposite. He got the opportunity. He probably wouldn't have been the starter. They were going to go with McCarthy there in Minnesota, but then McCarthy gets hurt and he's out for the year. So Darnold sees, and Darnold's not that old. I mean, this is only his eighth year. So he sees an opportunity here to make a name for himself, and he played extremely well. Or was it that the defense just wasn't that good? So a complete meltdown there, I thought, with the Giants. Tell us about it.
Well, and I can go list by list. I sent you a thing I made. I made a tier list because
Yep.
that's fun.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of categorizing five different feelings of different NFL fan bases.
Yeah.
And we can talk about this more later, and I can rattle it off if you want.
Yeah.
Um, but like, because you have teams that they're feeling like, okay, week one was great. We were good last year. This is our year. Um, and then you have teams that they lost, but they're still feeling pretty good. Like, for example, the Ravens. Like,
Yeah.
they lost the defended two-time defending champs. Like, there's no shame there. The next is like, did we get exposed by something? Is there like, did our loss kind of show a flaw? And then the next group is like well, it might not be a horrible season. Like we played pretty well and we won, something like that. And then there's the man, it's going to be a long year, and that's where the Giants are. Did you know that Daniel Jones, since signing that contract, has more pick sixes than passing touchdowns? He's thrown the ball more to score for the other team than his own team. Um, it has just been absolutely infuriating to watch it.
Yeah.
And I heard someone say it, I think it was probably on WFAN, like, what is their plan this year? Is it to fully tank? Is this like the end of the line and everyone's gone after this year? Because it seems like we're kind of in a weird spot. And I don't know what the solution is. I think solution number one is Daniel Jones. And I kind of was thinking this beforehand. I think it's less of a matter of if and more of a matter of when. Um, he's no longer going to be a starting quarterback for the New York Giants. I think they brought in Drew Lock for a reason, and I think it's exactly this. Um, but just like every facet of the game, it just seems like everything is lost right now. Their defense, which was supposed to be kind of their strength, did not look good. I mean, the Vikings, they're in a tough division and they had a great offense under Kirk Cousins, but people did not expect to see what they saw on Sunday.
No.
So yeah, it's going to be a long year, and this is very reminiscent of some of those Nick teams, like the infamous Fizdale years or the Kurt Rambis year,
Oh,
where you're like a couple weeks in, because like everyone goes in with the slight potential optimism that like maybe the projections aren't as bad. Like look at the Patriots. Patriot fans are giddy this week, even though like Jacoby Brissett was their starting quarterback and they beat the Bengals by 6, and they still didn't score a lot. But like there's always that sense of optimism. But when you get shellacked week one and you already had concerns about your team, like there's no hope at this point. Um, I think of like the Knicks teams where December 25th rolls around and they play their last relevant game, and that's because they play Christmas Day at MSG. And it's like, well, okay, let's see it. Who's really good in college?
yeah.
Who do I want to quarterback the New York Giants next year? Probably someone that's going to be hopefully playing for a national championship in the college ranks. So,
Yeah. Thank God that those days, at least for now, are over for the Knicks, you know. Um,
yeah.
I don't even know what questions to ask you. The running game, I know Barkley is not here anymore, but what the heck? I thought that the guy that they got back there was pretty good. I mean, see, it's up to the coaches to make sure that the team is ready to play. I mean, someone said this is not my original thought, but I've thought this before that this is the only time you get all this time to prepare is for week one. Other than that, you know, like the Dolphins and Bills play tonight, they only got a few days to prepare for each other, you know, but you get a long time to prepare for week one, and the Giants just didn't look prepared. Is that all in the coaching? I mean, but also Jones was missing passes. You know, I mean, he was missing receivers that were open. Not too many were open, but when they did get open, he was missing them. I mean, is this fall on the coaches, and why wasn't the running game better?
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is with the running game. I feel like they were to me, it feels like they were surprised that they lost Saquon Barkley, which they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean, Hard Knocks kind of shows that.
Yeah.
But then also, I think maybe it wasn't that they weren't surprised. I feel like they just didn't have a plan B. Um, and it does kind of seem like maybe it was the coaching, just not being ready for the moment. And we've said that before. And a lot of like I think back to was it 2 years ago when they opened against Tennessee when
Oh,
Tennessee was good
yeah.
and he goes for the 2 pointer and like everyone's like, oh my gosh, like this is
Shining
great.
moment. Yeah, yeah.
But like now we're like, I don't have it up. They've been outscored something like 68-3 on opening
Yeah.
day the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And to me, like I said, you have plenty of time to prepare for it. And also, like, I understand that preseason has kind of been diminished, but you could tell the teams that did not do anything in preseason and the teams that did.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah.
Giants being one of them. I would also put the Jets in there.
Yeah.
And some of the guys like when Peyton Manning was kind of criticizing Ayuk for like dropping an easy pass in the end zone. He's like, well, if
Yeah.
you got your contract settled and you were in camp, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard.
But it was a diving catch, though. I didn't get the criticism on that. I mean, I know he normally catches those, but he was diving across the end zone. Well, let's get to the Jets. I know you watched most of the Monday night game, and I don't feel as bad about the Jets, and I'll tell you why. Um, that's a tall task opening night to fly across the country and play the defending NFC champs, who are on a lot of people's list, the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year, right? Or at least to get back there. Them are the Lions, right? Are the ones that are the prohibitive favorites in the NFC. But that being said, this defense was I was more disappointed in the defense than I was in Aaron Rodgers or Brees Hall or I thought Garrett Wilson played his heart out, but um, he had one or two drops as well, and so I don't know where the plan was for the defense to at least hold the 49ers in check. I mean, Kenny, wasn't there a time in the game? It was either 6 or 7 drives in a row that the 49ers scored. I'm like, can we just get a stop here, man? And where are my Williams guys and all of these vaunted defensive players and why Sauce Gardner on the sideline for like 2 or 3 series? It just seemed really odd. But Rodgers definitely looked rusty, but I was expecting that a little bit. I was glad he didn't get hurt. I think, a lot of people like same old Jets. He's probably going to get hurt. He looked a little rusty, but he also at times looked kind of sharp. I mean, they had that really good one drive in the first quarter, towards the tail end of the first quarter that got everybody pumped up because we had the church guys over um and we're like, okay, let's go now. Looked like we got a little something going here, but then that was it. Now they play Tennessee this week, the Jets. So okay, you got that test out of the way, and a loss is a loss, whether it's to a great team or not. Because if you're gonna step up and think you're going to go to Buffalo in January and face the Bills in the playoffs, or you're gonna go to Cincinnati or to Baltimore, or if they get that far to Kansas City, well, you've got to do a better showing against the 49ers. So I was disappointed, but I have a good feeling that they will bounce back this week. Tennessee, they had a really good showing in their opening game, but they're not going to be a contender this year. I'd be shocked. I think everybody would. So it's the Jets defense that really, really let me down. I'm optimistic about the offense. Um, so we'll see. What were some of your thoughts? And now I want to ask you about the Browns, and we're going to get into Deshaun Watson.
Um, yeah, I think it is important to know. It's important to remember that. I mean, you can't really count last year because it was only 4 plays,
Right, right,
but
right.
it's been like almost a year and a half since Aaron Rodgers has played in an actual game. I know like he's gotten a lot of flack for preseason, and some of that is on him. But every player will tell you that it's still not the same as week one.
Right.
And
Yeah.
not just the fact that he hasn't played, but it's still the first time he's ever played with a new team.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some adjusting. It's going to take some time. I do think the Jets can make it. I think they can continue that momentum. Also, he is awful against the 49ers. He was awful in Green Bay. Anytime they would play the 49ers, he would always lose. So, like, part of that is also just for whatever reason, they have his number. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think we also have to keep in mind, I'm not sure why my voice is acting up now, but I think we also have to keep in mind that he's a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. He's not a 40-year-old Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Tom Brady
yeah.
at 40 was like a lot of quarterbacks at 30. You know what I mean? So, um, but I think the offense can be good enough. It's the defense that needs to dominate in my book. And they had to stop the 49ers one of those times. They just couldn't stop them. They couldn't stop Jordan. When they said McCaffrey wasn't playing, I was like, you never want to see anybody hurt, but I'm like, okay, their best player's not playing. Maybe we have a shot here, but boy, they couldn't stop Jordan, the running back that backed him up. It could be a lot worse. Either one of us could be fans of the Cleveland Browns, and I know since you're a family, all Browns fans there, and I've fallen in love with your city where you live. I've been following and rooting for the Browns. They took a dismantling from the Cowboys, and I thought Tom Brady was pretty good, actually. I'm sure you probably have some thoughts with him. I thought he was okay. I think he'll get better as the season goes on. There were few insightful things I thought that he said. I think as he loosens up, he's gonna be really good. But I mean, it was from A to Z. There was nothing that I took from that Browns game that I said, okay, the Browns are going to be a contender. Unlike with the Jets, we saw those bright spots. I didn't see any bright spots with the Browns, and we'll get into the looming quarterback thing in a second. But what's the feeling there in Cleveland, and what were your thoughts on that game?
Oh, yeah. Well, I consider myself a secondary Browns fan.
Yeah,
Like, yes, I still root for the Giants, but like, because also like I watch pretty much every game because that's always what's here.
right.
Um, but man, I stopped watching that pretty quickly. It was rough. Um, I think there's a couple of saving graces for the Browns. And first of all, like Miles Garrett is still a really good defensive end.
Yeah,
Arguably, people would probably say TJ Watt, but arguably the best defensive lineman in the game.
yeah,
Um, he's still a guy that like he can get to the quarterback basically whenever he wants. Micah Parsons might also be there, whatever. Another saving grace potentially is Nick Chubb will be back at some point this year. He's on the pup list, so he's out at least until week 4. But the assumption is that he'll get some in-game time. I'm sure when he comes back on the field, he's getting a standing ovation. Not only because of how brutal the injury was, but
yeah,
because he is very beloved here.
yeah,
Um, but to me, one of the biggest red flags, like, yes, we can harp on Deshaun Watson for a long time. I'm going to pull up a stat that I saw that also is just very scary. So since leaving the Browns, Baker Mayfield's almost 6,500 passing yards, 18 interceptions, 44 touchdowns, a rating of 90.9, completion percentage at 63%, is 1-1 in the playoffs. Deshaun Watson, in the same time, 2,386 passing yards, 11 interceptions, 17 touchdowns, a rating of 78.1, completion percentage of 59, and zero and or no record in the playoffs. Um, it's one thing to have a bad quarterback. I
yeah.
mean, the Browns were known for that for years. where I mean, we could go through the whole list. When I first got here, Deshaun Kaiser was their quarterback and led them to 1-15 or 0-16 season. I don't remember which one. I think both.
Deshaun Kaiser. Wow, I don't even remember him.
Yeah,
uh,
and then they finally get Baker Mayfield, and
yeah,
it looks good. And then they
yeah.
decide to try to upgrade to Deshaun Watson in the top.
I, all right. You broke it down nicely, and I know the fans there in Cleveland are very frustrated because, and I root for the Browns for a couple of reasons. One what I said, but also one of the same reasons I root for the Lions. I mean, there's very few teams now that's never been to a Super Bowl. And the Browns have such a rich history of winning the NFL championships back in the 50s and 60s. And it's kind of hard to believe they've never been to a Super Bowl, you know? Um, but let's get to Deshaun Watson for a second and kind of segue over. And I want to reveal something to not just you, but to anybody listening. Um, Watson just, to me, he still looks rusty. He seems like he's lost not just a step. He looked like he's lost a few steps. His accuracy is off. It doesn't seem like the team responds to his leadership. You know, I try to read some of the body language of the Browns players. And with that said, I want to come back to it in a second. But with that said, I think I told you that this to me, it was starting to feel like karma. But I have to tell you this, Kenny, I didn't like the way I was feeling because there were times when I'm watching that game and I'm like, yeah, good for him. You know, come on. I don't want to see him be successful. I never said that out loud until just now. And I had to really check myself because that's not how God works. God does want him to repent. I don't know if he's repented or not. We'll get into this new case in a second. But I think if he has repented and he can make amends with and admit for some of the damage that he's done, that maybe, just maybe, he can put some stuff behind him so he can get back to who he was. So I'm shocked that he's played this bad in that sense because I was comparing him a lot to Michael Vick. And you and I had these discussions. Michael Vick was, I think, either 30 or 31 after missing 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, right? And Michael Vick was
So,
absolutely not close to being the same player that he was before. But it was understandable with the time that he missed. With Watson, we knew he was missing a year and change, a year and 11 games, right? He didn't play that whole year. And then they suspended him. He didn't come back till I think week 11 or week 12. And so, but at his age and his conditioning, I felt like, and you felt the same way, that, okay, he could probably recapture where he was. He's nowhere near the quarterback that he was 3 years ago. And that to me is stunning that he hasn't fit into this offense yet. Because I get a feeling it's not the coach. I think you guys have a good coach. I'm saying you guys, but the Browns have a good coach. Now, I want to say this. His father passed away last week. His friend from Clemson, I wrote his name down here somewhere. DeAndre Overton was shot and killed. That was his wide receiver, one of his wide receivers at Clemson, 26 years old. Tragedy. Drug related, something stupid, but still a tragedy. And so the Browns, I think, offered for him, hey, why don't you take the week off? And he said, nope, I need to be here with my guys. I think that's an exact quote. That's commendable, right? But maybe he did need the time off. Um, it doesn't get easier for the Browns because they play Jacksonville this week, and Jacksonville's going to be angry because they blew that game in the last few minutes this past week. I I don't know what it is with Watson, Ken. Now you also, and he had to know that this was hanging over his head. I think the latest that came today is that this lady that's now accusing him of a sexual assault inside of her home, he shows up angry because he couldn't find her place. I mean, she has excruciating detail on this. She goes to fix herself up in her bathroom, comes out, and he's stark naked. This is not for kids, this part, by the way, guys. And if it's like a one-time thing, you're like, okay, benefit of the doubt, right? But how many cases were there that sounded similar? This one sounds a little bit worse because it takes place in her home. And it doesn't have to do with a massage, although he does ask for that. Uh, there's places you can read where it's pretty graphic. But what I just read is that now she is talking to the NFL. The NFL has opened up another investigation. So who knows where this is going to lead with Watson. But the other thing is the Browns are very smart to sign a guy like Jameis Winston. Oh my gosh, Jameis Winston, if you look back, he had some really, really good moments, not just with Tampa. I was surprised that he didn't stick with New Orleans because I remember him winning a couple of games there, pulling him out at the last minute. And we all remember Jameis Winston in college. He was great, in college. So I think he's a more than capable backup. I think he could start probably for a lot of teams. So my question to you is now, I got that out of the way, right? I don't feel that way anymore with Watson. I had to come to terms with why am I glad when he's not doing well, is this karma or whatever? And that's not who I want to be. I know that's not who you want to be. I would much rather see Winston turn his life around. Not Winston, Watson turn his life around. But it's almost like he can't go forward until he goes back a little bit. At least that's what I'm seeing. And I just think it's not when it's not going to be if, it'll be when Jameis Winston steps in there. And then it's going to be, oh my gosh, this probably already is the worst contract in NFL history because of the guaranteed money. But when he starts to sit on the sidelines in week 3, week 4, or the commissioner suspends him again, then it's really going to become the worst contract in NFL history. What say you?
All right, I'll start with the contract thing. I looked up Michael Vick too, so contract situation.
Yeah.
So let's say the Browns were like, let's cut you today. It would be a $200 million dead cap. Let's say they cut him after, it is worse. Let's say they cut him after the 2025 season, $172 million dead cap.
They can't do it.
After the 2026 season, $99 million cap hit, dead cap hit. So they're stuck with him, at least ish. I think the only way that they could probably get out of this is if the NFL like suspends him or puts him on like the exempt list or something like that. So then they can like say it's like a personal conduct thing. But there's a few thoughts that come to mind. Now, first, I think why you and others feel like that is because of the magnitude of the contract. Let's say the Browns did this whole thing and they gave him 2 guaranteed years. I feel like people wouldn't feel as strongly about it. But he got the highest and most guaranteed money in NFL history to date. It's only recently that someone has passed him. And also like the fully guaranteed contract was totally unprecedented. Not even with like big players. Like everyone has like partially guaranteed money in the NFL. So doing a fully guaranteed contract with a guy that was coming off of a very significant and scary suspension hard. This is not the best of comparisons, but I think it still works. Let's say tomorrow, I don't know, let's say the White Sox signed, I don't know, comparing the Browns to the White Sox is probably not a good idea. Look, the Cubs. The Cubs are like a team that should be better than they are. Let's say the Cubs signed Trevor Bauer to a 5-year, $300 million contract where he's getting the highest AAV of any player in Major League Baseball. People wouldn't want that to happen. People would be very upset about it. Yes, he deserves a second chance, and yes, he should be in Major League Baseball. He won like the Mexican League World Series MVP and everything like that.
Right.
But I think with Deshaun Watson, and because like Trevor Bauer hasn't actually been accused of anything, and Deshaun Watson has like hard evidence that he did very awful things. Um, but it's hard because I think there's so many different layers from like a fan perspective, especially a Browns fan perspective. Um, you had Baker Mayfield. He was dealing for you. He was very Cleveland-like, kind of like that, like that tough, like
Yeah.
underdog type of mentality. He fit the city so well, and they kind of threw him off to the wayside for Deshaun Watson. And since then, Baker Mayfield has thrived, and Deshaun Watson has fallen apart. But then also, it is really hard to root for a guy that has so many sexual assault allegations, now has like sexual assault kind of mixed with some verbal and physical assault, not to mention the fact that he still denies ever doing anything, period.
Yeah.
And I think, because like you mentioned Michael Vick. Michael Vick was gone, I looked up, for 4 years.
He's going four
He
years.
was
Wow.
26.
Right.
He was age 26 and then came back in at 30. And honestly, his numbers were pretty similar. In his first year back, he made the Pro Bowl.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and Watson hasn't, like, you can make an argument that Deshaun Watson is like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL.
Oh,
I heard
yeah.
someone saying this, and it's kind of funny, but also not funny. Um, Deshaun Watson is playing so bad at football that he's a better person than football player.
Oh,
And
God.
he's not a good person.
Uh,
So I don't know. It's rough. I do wonder what the NFL is going to do, because if you suspend him, which I think they probably are probably leaning more towards like an admin leave, especially if this gets louder in the next couple weeks. Um, First, you're probably looking at a lawsuit of some sort. Maybe, I don't know. I don't see Deshaun Watson just kind of going away quiet. Um, Especially like after he's gone through all of the legal issues that he has. Um, but also, the longer the NFL takes to do anything about it, the worse it's going to look for them.
yeah.
People will look at like Ray Rice 2.0 there, where like something serious happens and we have evidence of it. The NFL is doing nothing about it. So they need to do something. I mean, I know they have said like we're under investigation, but you can't let that investigation linger.
No.
But on the positive, I do think it seems like the team is more embracing Jameis Winston than Deshaun Watson. And I think if he steps up, I think I agree with you. It's a matter of when, not if. Um, when he steps up, I think that the team will really embrace him, and I can see them actually moving forward and having a pretty good season.
I agree. I think they went from the worst signing in history to a really good signing with Winston. My last quick comment for you is you're right on Roger Goodell. The last thing he knows how bad he looked, the way he handled the Ray Rice thing. So the NFL, if anything, they've come down a little bit harder. I'm surprised they haven't come down harder on the Chiefs receiver that crashed and ran away this past summer. You know, they're letting him play, but now, but Watson, since he's been there before, you know, it's going to be interesting because again, that I don't think that was supposed to leak out. It was the lady who said, "Yeah, the NFL has asked to speak to me." So I don't think it's going to linger. I think you'll see him. Listen, you need to sit down. I think the administrative thing, and that gives the Browns a little bit of an out to play Winston. They won't have a choice. But you know, again, the hope with all this is that he turns his life around and he repents and apologizes, make restitution, whatever he has to do. God knows he's going to have enough money no matter what happens. Unless, like I said, the NFL, they find a way to suspend his contract too. Um, and then, like you said, I think he'll fight that tooth and nail. So we'll see. And it doesn't get easy. Like I said, we'll get to the games this week in a second, but Browns at Jacksonville, that's not an easy task. I wanted to briefly talk about the Tyreek Hill thing. Because that made headlines, and it seems like it was just yesterday that Scotty Scheffler, the golfer, almost the same thing sort of happened. Um, but this you got to see it more, right? Because they released all the body cam footage and everything like that. And Michael Wilbon said this the other day. I was watching Party Interruption, and he articulated exactly how I was feeling after I saw that. Uh, two things can be true at the same time. Like, so I thought that it was true that Tyreek Hill, all he had to do was roll his window down. Now he might not have liked how the cop, slammed on his window and said, "Put it down now." I'm gonna share a very quick story in a second, a personal story for me, but he should have just put his window down, whether he liked it or not, right? Because then he would have got his ticket and he would have been on his way. None of this would have happened. But I think the second cop that came in definitely overreacted. I mean, you're going to drag the guy out of his car. You're going to make him get on. I mean, for what? A traffic violation? Or because he refused to put his window? I mean, you didn't have any suspicion that he was doing anything else, and then to make him, he said, "Hey, I just had knee surgery," but yet you make him sit down like that anyway. It almost became personal on their part, right? You're going to mouth off to me a little bit now. I'm going to get you back, which is not really a police officer's job. They're supposed to just do their job, the law, or whatever. Say what you want to say. Now, he refuses to put his window down. His window's tinted. He can't see in there. So yes, they had every right to tell him leave your window down. I'm sure that's part of their procedure. And he should have complied with that. I'll share the story real quick, Kenny. I was at the time I was like a senior manager. I wasn't a store manager yet at a Red Lobster. It's in the early 90s, a Red Lobster in Queens. And there had been some crime. It was a decent area of Queens, but there had been some crime over the last week or two before that. I think a store next to us had gotten robbed. Um and so there used to be a lady that would come and she would come with roses. She was an immigrant. And she would come and I don't know where she get these roses from, but she would sell roses in front of the restaurant, people, Red Lobster, back then probably still is to an extent. That's a big night out. I'm going to Red Lobster. So she'd sell flowers and guys taking their dates in would, of course, I'll buy a rose or whatever. And so one day I come up front and I see a police officer taking her roses away because I guess she didn't have the right permit to do it. And she's like begging him, she's crying, and he takes the roses and he's writing something. And I, like an idiot, I say, "Oh, come on. All of the crime that's going on, you're going to do this to her. Why don't you give her a break?" I think I said give her a play, actually. And he stopped what he was doing and he turned around. He's like, "What?" And he said, "Sir, I talked to you over here." And he took me to another part of the restaurant. And right at that moment, I'm like, uh-oh. And man, oh man, he dressed me down, not yelling, but he said, I'll just sum up what he said. He said, if you say one more word, he said, "You're the only manager here, right?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you're going to have to call and get somebody to take your place." He said, "Because if you say one more word, I am going to definitely let her go. And I'm going to stop what I'm doing with her. And I am going to put handcuffs on you. You got that?" I mean, I'm cleaning it up, right? He was very nasty towards me. Okay, so now I have one of two choices: keep my already big mouth shut, which, thank you, I took that choice. Um, or I could have mouthed right back off to him, right? And said, "Who you think you're talking to, right? Go ahead, arrest me or whatever, in front of all these people, go ahead, do that." He was very, he was very smart to take me to a quiet spot and say, "Here's my only point. In these confrontations, I don't even like to call it, let's say interactions with officers, do what they tell you to do. You know what I mean? If you need to lodge a complaint against them after, go ahead and do that." Now, he's talking, I'm sure you caught this, right? He's talking to Drew Rosenhaus, his agent. Because he said, "I'm being arrested, Drew. I'm being arrested, Drew." You know that his agent was probably telling him before he got dragged out, "Well, why didn't you put your window down?" You know what I mean? Because his agent, that's the last thing he wants, that for Hill. Hill, to his credit, has been contrite. He said, "I could have handled it better." He did say he didn't use any bad language, and it looked like he didn't, but he should have kept his window down. But the other cop overreacted. What were your thoughts?
I mean, you summed it up well. I think there is still that tension of like, why did he pull him over? Like, I know it was like originally for speeding and all,
Yeah.
um, but like, there's there's still like the tension between citizens and police officers, and
Sure.
I totally
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of the biggest things that we always have to keep in mind is you said it perfectly. Like, if you need to file a complaint, if you need to report an officer afterwards, if you need to call for a supervisor, go for it. But don't give them a reason to do something that is excessive.
Yeah.
Now, I think that because like the tinted windows is, I understand why a player like Tyreek Hill would want that in Miami. Like, you're Tyreek, you want to try to like avoid your identity, but also like you want to have like the cops want to make sure number one they know who's in the car. Number two, they want to make sure that there aren't any like weapons or illegal drugs or anything like that. So yeah, like just roll down your window. I do think that um, something that really stuck with me that he said that to me is very interesting is, "What if I wasn't Tyreek Hill?" And that's one of those quotes that kind of stuck with me a little bit. Like, yeah, if now I think two things are true there too. Number one, like, yeah, if you weren't Tyreek Hill, I wonder what they would have done. Because like,
Right.
I mean, if they would have taken and arrested Tyreek Hill minutes before a football game and he's not able to go,
Yeah.
people would riot.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yes.
but also, I think there's a. I wonder. I'm not saying that this is the case, and maybe not. I wonder if there was a little bit of arrogance that, well, I'm Tyreek Hill. Yeah, I probably was speeding and probably shouldn't have done that. But like, you should know who I am and you know where I'm going. So please let me go.
I got that from him not putting the window down. I mean, he should have just put the window down. I mean, how hard is that? You know what I mean? And you couldn't see a thing. You see the video, and when his window's up, you can't see a thing in that car, which that can't be legal either, you know?
No.
But I just think so that's wrong, right? But then that second officer could have said, hey, now he has his license, so he could read, say, hey, Mr. Hill, maybe he doesn't know he's a football player. Um, Mr. Hill, come on, work with me here. I really need to ask you he didn't have to bang on it like that. The other one could have easily said, listen, work with us here. We don't want this to escalate. Just roll down your window. Let me run your license. I'll get you out of here or whatever. But listen, if you don't roll down your window, then we've got to take some more action. I mean, they went from 0 to 100 quick. They were like, oh, you're not going to roll it down? All right, get out. It's like, but
Yeah.
if I'm Hill, I mean, me now, a cop asked me to roll down my window. I'm rolling down my window. If I don't know, and if I need to take action after, like you said, or you call a supervisor, that could have been handled a
Yeah.
lot of other ways.
Cause like I think this is one of the things that, I mean, we're looking big societal. I feel like a lot of police officers need to learn more de-escalation techniques and
Yeah.
like not going from 0 to 100. Now, I've never been a police officer, and I don't know what kind of like stressors can like
Right.
cause that, but like
Right.
you have to have, as a police officer, kind of like us as pastors, as leaders, like we have to live at that higher standard because we don't know what we're walking into.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like, I mean, we're here at the coffee shop. Like, if someone's mad at like how I made their drink, I can't be like, well, you told me to make it like that, you jerk. Like, I have to be the one that's more
Yeah.
professional about it.
Right.
And I think that that's something that is missing, and that's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think that they went just like absolutely berserk over not
Yeah.
rolling down a window.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Tyreek Hill, like, you got to know that that's going to get out there,
Yeah.
and you have to make sure that you're doing the right things.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was going 20 miles over the speeding limit. I think it was like a 40-mile speed limit, and he was going 60 or something like that. And it's near the stadium, so that's where they slow the traffic down and everything. You and I have been a million times to, Yankee Stadium or Citi Field or wherever, where you have a bunch of police stopping you from going too fast, whether you're a player or not. Well, let's do this real quick. What are you watching this Sunday? Now, you got Buffalo Miami tonight. You watching that?
I always say I will, but I won't. Let's be
I'm just not
honest.
pumped up on Thursdays yet. And that's a really good matchup, a really good early season matchup. But I'm not pumped up yet. All right. Obviously, we have
This
Jets at Tennessee and we have Giants at the Commanders. So both teams can kind of get a little redemption here. Neither Tennessee or Washington are expected to do much this year. Do you think we can get a couple of W's on the board here?
I think we're going one of two.
All right. Both those games again are on at the same time at 1 o'clock. So now you've got the Browns at Jacksonville. So let's just say it stays status quo and Watson is your quarterback. What are you thinking there? Are the Browns going 0-2 here?
No, it's also interesting. I don't know if you saw this. Um, they're doing some kind of tribute to Trevor Lawrence. Like they renamed
What?
the stadium or something like
Oh,
that.
get out of here.
Like Trevor at Bank. Like it's something weird, and I don't get it. It's
Yeah.
like, but whatever. So I think they are going to be really hyped. Uh, Also, the Browns have played the Jags pretty well. I think it's
Yeah.
all about establishing the run game, though. If they can
Yeah.
get the run game going, maybe Deshaun Watson will
Yeah.
chill out a little bit.
Yeah. That Anthony Richardson throw down the field. I don't know if you saw the highlight on that. I mean, he must have thrown it 80 yards in the air. It was unbelievable. But Jacksonville, they're not going to be they're going to be angry this week. So I think they'll win that. Um, the big 4-25 game is Cincy at Kansas City, and Joe Burrow didn't look that great.
Yeah,
There's rumors that his wrist is still hurting. What are your thoughts there?
I think that's the game to circle. Obviously, Kansas City, if they go 2-0, I mean, they're kind of there. But the team to look at those, Cincinnati, like you have Jamar Chase in kind of a weird contract dispute.
Yeah.
Um, and like T. Higgins is probably going to be gone after this year.
Yep.
Like
He said he is.
the wheels can,
Yeah.
yeah, like the wheels can fall apart very, very quickly in Cincinnati. So, um, but also 0-2, like really they should be 1-1 because you need to beat the Patriots there,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when you know who's coming up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I agree. I agree. Yeah. I Cincy is the only team in the playoffs that went into Kansas City and beat them. So they could beat the Chiefs. I'm just not sure that they are at full capacity yet with some of the things that went on with them. And I think the Chiefs are feeling as confident as they ever are after beating the Ravens the way they did. Last quick one I have for you is the Bears at Houston Sunday night. Caleb Williams didn't look that great, but they won. He did enough. I think he'll improve as the season goes on. And CJ Stroud looked like CJ Stroud looked last year. What are you thinking there?
I think that's like the most underrated, interesting matchup
Yeah,
because it's like the
I agree.
AFC, NFC.
Yeah,
It would be very bold to say, "Oh, is that a Super Bowl preview?" But um, I think it's you could have both of those teams looking at trying to make a deep playoff run.
yeah,
Especially like Bears have a good defense. The only thing is like Caleb Williams doing that as a rookie is kind of unprecedented. So
yeah. Okay. Should be a great week. We're going to have a lot more to talk about with football next week, obviously, with the Deshaun Watson thing. We'll see how that plays out. And then, football is different, man. You get to week 3, week 4. If you're 0-3, or if you start 0-4, man, it gets really, really difficult. All right, let's transition over to baseball. We've got about 10, 15 minutes or so to talk a little baseball. Let's start with your Yankees. Sort of an up and down week. You had Clay Holmes blowing saves left and right here, but then you had Luke Weaver stepping in. And you had a big walk-off win yesterday in the 12th inning. Maybe a playoff preview, Yankees Royals. How you feeling about the Yankees this week? They're a game and a half up right now on the Orioles.
well, a couple things. First off, uh, do you know their Yankees Red Sox, they have 4-game series. It's the Fox game tonight.
Oh,
I guess
that's going to
college
be on
football
Fox
and all.
tonight? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Going against a little
Um,
football. There you go.
yeah. So, I mean, that's also part of the reason why there's another Thursday night game that I kind of care about more.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but mentioned Aaron Judge since debuting on the Paw Patrol, he has not hit a home run. Um,
You're blaming the Paw Patrol, Kenny. I mean, those
yeah,
poor pups. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's all Rubble's fault. Um, it is interesting because it seems like he's ending the year the way he started. And I heard it this way. I heard it earlier, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a good point to me. And I agree with this now. 60 home runs would be great. I don't care about that. A second MVP would be great. Honestly, I don't really care about that either.
Yeah,
If Aaron Judge has a garbage September, gets hot, and leads this team to a World
that's
Series,
all.
that's all I care about.
That's it. I agree with you. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I mean, he still probably will win MVP. You know who also has had a garbage last couple weeks has been Bobby Witt.
Yeah,
So like
he's down
both
to
of them kind of struggled at
334.
the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, he
So
was batting like 360 something and he's down to like 334. So he cooled off big time. But I think the Royals are gonna get in, at least into the postseason. I think them and the Twins and whoever loses division, hopefully it's the Orioles, will be the wild cards in the American League. I'll be surprised if it's Seattle, unless they get real hot and they played a lot better of late. Um, I you and I sometimes we can nail stuff because we feel it, and we've seen Juan Soto since he was, a teenager coming up with the Nationals, and both you and I said we thought he was going to have a tremendously big year with the Yankees. That the spotlight doesn't bother him, that he would embrace, the bright lights, big city of the Bronx. We thought it's been perfect for him, and 39 homers. I know he has over 100 RBIs now, right?
100 exactly.
100 exactly. I mean, what a spectacular year. Think about that. Him and Witt, any other year would be MVP. They'd be battling for it. I still think Judge will win the MVP, but Soto, I mean, that's conversation for another time, but you got to keep him. As much as I like to see him on the Mets, he's built to play in Yankee Stadium and with in the Bronx. I mean, he has just thrived there. It's been just tremendous and fun to watch. More for you because I know you've watched him a lot more than I have this year. Just a tremendous win for the Mets yesterday. I was getting a little nervous. They're hitting. All of a sudden, they went into a slump. Even Lindor was slumping. Almost the whole team was slumping. But I mean, he comes up big in the ninth inning. I mean, we talked about it in the beginning, and that opened the floodgates for a big rally. Chad Green didn't look good at all yesterday. I think he threw 35 pitches and they finally pulled him. Um, so now, the Nationals beat the Braves last night. So the Braves now 1 game down on the Mets. And this is pennant race baseball. It goes back and forth every day, where, one day they're tied, the next day the Mets are down by a game. And so this is going to be fun going down the road here. D-backs cooled off, but looks like they got hot again against their World Series opponents. And so the Padres lost last night though, so they've come back to earth a little bit. Both those teams have like 82 wins, and the Mets have 80 wins now. It's hard to believe that the Mets turned around their season like this. I really want to pinch myself. I don't want to pinch myself. Put it that way. Um, and so now the Mets have this big 3 game series against the Phillies this weekend. Let me throw a couple of other series at you this weekend. You know what's kind of a big series this weekend is the Orioles and the Tigers. Have you looked at the Tigers record and how they've kind of crept into the whole wild card thing? I don't think they'll make it, but I know you don't like him, but you got to give AJ Hinch a little bit of credit here, man. He's managed that team extremely well.
Yeah, well, the AL Central we thought was going to be an awful division.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
they're combined though like 33, 34 games below 500, and only one team in the division is
Oh,
below 500, and that's the
that's
amazing White Sox.
wow. Yeah. Yeah. We don't
So,
want to pile on.
um,
Dude. Yeah.
but yeah, that's going to be very interesting. Um, Also, I didn't realize this until I just looked. Um, the second to last series of the year for both the Mets and the Yankees is like circle your calendars.
Yeah.
This is the real stuff right there. Because um, really, it seems like in the American League, like I know the Tigers are kind of in it. They're 3 games back. Seattle's 4 back. The Red Sox are also 4 back. Um, but it kind of seems like the top 6 there are probably going to be who they are, like the Astros, the
Yeah.
Guardians, Yankees, Orioles, Twins, Royals. National League, we're really looking at kind of 7 teams for 6 spots. Like the divisions are basically sealed up. I know that there's still a chance of like Arizona gets really hot again, or San Diego gets really hot, and the Dodgers cool off. But it's probably going to be the Phillies, the Brewers, and the Dodgers. But
Yeah.
those other teams, it's going to be very interesting. Like, I don't want to make the full blown comparison. Was it 2022 when the Mets had faced the Braves and they lost the division? Like, I'm not wishing that upon the
It
Mets,
makes such a
but I
bad
am
memory.
saying
Yes. Yeah.
I think that we could be looking at a series with that high implications looking towards
Yeah.
the end of the year there.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of a game that Jacob deGrom pitched down the stretch, and I'm reminded that he's pitching Friday, I think, tomorrow, first time.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, for Texas. So we wish him well, certainly. But Red Sox Yankees, I think that's always good, and I think the Red Sox are pretty much out of the race now. I think after they got swept by the Mets, that kind of put them a little bit out of race, but they've had overall a good year. In Atlanta, you've got the Dodgers against the Braves this weekend. What are your thoughts there? And by the way, you said the Mets and Yankees next to last series. The Mets do have the Braves, right? But then they finished the last 3 games against the Brewers in Milwaukee. So I'm thinking that maybe the Brewers won't have anything to play for at that point. So, but the Mets have not played the Brewers well for years now, in Milwaukee or in New York. So we'll see. I know they got swept early this season. Is that the first series of the year with Jeff McNeil and our first baseman there? I think I
oh,
think that was the first series of the year. Or it was definitely in the first
I think so.
homestand. Yeah, yeah. So, um, but you got Braves, Dodgers, and then you got, speaking of Brewers, you got them going up against the Diamondbacks out in Arizona. So, some really, really interesting series to watch this weekend. This is the funnest time of year, isn't it? Is it more fun this time of year than it is like in March and April, or because I mean both the Mets and Yankees are in it, which makes it even more fun. Which is more fun to you right now?
I think it might be this time of year
Yeah,
because because football is still fun. Because sometimes because football isn't happening, and sometimes in March it's still a little bit too early to get really excited about the NBA. But you also have March Madness. I think when it comes to like our rooting interest, I like this time of year more, especially
right.
with both the Yankees and Mets are in.
Yeah, last year the Mets were totally out of it this time. So, although I think they were playing well after they had stripped their team, they were playing better, but you just knew they weren't going to get back in the race. Well, this should be fun. Night in and night out, I find myself refreshing my MLB app, seeing what the score in the Braves game is. I was doing that last night, and I'm like, all right, one out in the ninth inning. Nationals is still leading 5-1. Because part of me was like, the Braves are going to come back, against the Nationals. The Nationals have some good young players. It's going to be fun to watch them over the next few years. And I want to say this real quick, and we'll go to inspiration. Going to be fun to watch the Blue Jays also. I didn't recognize hardly any of the names of the Blue Jays, whereas that they were just star-studded like a year or two ago. But I guess Bichette must be hurt, right?
Yeah, I think he's hurt. I don't want it to be fun to watch the Blue Jays.
Yeah,
I already got the Orioles to deal with.
they've got some good young pitching. I mean, they ran into the injury bug, and I think they stuck with a few veterans too long. I think George Springer is batting like 220, so I think they stuck with a few of those guys a little bit too long. But they've got to keep Guerrero. They can't let him go to free agency. There's teams that's going to want him. I mean, he looks like his dad now because he's slimmed down. And he's having a sensational year. He'd be in the MVP conversation as well with the year he's having. If the Blue Jays win contention. But I think they're going to be good over the next couple of years. So, all right, you ready for some inspiration?
Yeah.
All right, mine is quick. Very, very quietly. No got named starting safety on the Buffalo Bills, Mr. DeMar Hamlin. And
Oh,
I was just excited. He had 2 tackles and 2 assists. No interceptions or anything like that. But last year he only played in totally 5 games. I mean, he was on the inactive list. for quite a few games. And then when he played, it was just like on special teams or, when they would put in like a nickel package, he might get in on defense. And I totally understood that because they were, being careful with him. Because I was like, wasn't he their starter? I was like wondering why he wasn't playing last year, but I'm sure they were just being overly cautious. But out of training camp, he's was named a starting safety and he played most of if not all of the defensive downs with Buffalo. So DeMar Hamlin, God bless him. He's been through a lot and he's praised the Lord all through it. And so that's a guy that you got to be rooting for, or you don't have to be, but we're gonna be rooting for him for sure. DeMar Hamlin, that's my inspiration this week.
Boom! I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yep.
I had seen a thing regarding Craig Counsell uh, as a player. So I wish I had pulled up. Actually, maybe I can do this real quick. Craig Counsell was doing pretty okay as a player. He was kind of an average player. And then hits the 99 season and has a very bad year. Um, just for the record, he batted 218 between Florida and the Dodgers. And so he then starts out spring training and he goes 0 for 44. Um, and I didn't even know this was a thing, but so he's in spring training and he hits a line shot and it gets caught and robbed by none other than Garth Brooks, who was like on spring training teams as like a way to raise charity
I
money and
sort
all
of
that.
remember that. Yeah. He caught Craig
So,
Counsell's line drive. I didn't know that.
yeah, he robbed Craig Counsell of his first hit. And that kind of was an awakening moment to him that he needs to do something different. So Craig Counsell, I remember him sadly for the 2001 World Series. I also know him having a very bizarre batting stance. It was after that encounter that he figured he would start, yeah, like the
Yeah.
really far up.
Yeah.
He decided to change his batting stance as a way to kind of stave his MLB career. And so once he did that, he became a much better player, signed with the Diamondbacks, then was with the Brewers for a little bit. Ended up playing for 16 years. So um, to me, what really hit me was like, sometimes it is an odd moment that can kind of change your life. But also, like, sometimes it's just a small little adjustment that you have to make that can make a huge difference. Like, especially in sports, but also just in life in general. Maybe
Yeah.
that adjustment is like,
Yeah.
maybe I don't need to go to bed with my phone so I can sleep better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
It's a great, great point. Counsell was also on the 97 Marlins that won the championship that year. And he was part of that rally, but it was Edgar Renteria, if I remember right, that got the World Series winning hit. It might have been Counsell that scored, actually. Somehow I remember him in the middle of that rally. He was a very good player, I thought. I didn't realize that he hit 218 one year. He was solid and steady. And I'm actually kind of glad that he's turned that Cubs year around, that they're probably going to finish over 500 at least. Um, because he was starting to really feel some heat, man. This is the highest paid manager, I mean, the Cubs were playing so badly for so long. Speaking of which, did you see that catch by Pete Crow Armstrong, former Met, who was traded for Javi Baez, that he robbed? Who was it that he robbed? Max Muncy, that he robbed.
Yeah.
And it would have been a walk-off 3-run homer, and he robbed him of it. That was unbelievable. And then he made another catch in the gap where he slid. It came out of nowhere. He's a really good outfielder, and he's turning out to be a pretty good hitter. So another one the Mets let get away. But, you know, Javi Baez, I don't want to say anything bad about. My goodness, I don't. What happened to him? He's one of the best hitters in baseball and one of the best shortstops.
Was it 2019 that he was runner up for MVP?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think it was
Like,
2019. I mean,
that's not that long ago.
no, it's not. And he's not that old. And I'm sure well, he hasn't played as much because Hinch has benched him a lot. So I was going to say, if
No,
he's played,
2018.
it was 2018. Yeah. I was going to say, if he's played a lot, there's no doubt that he would be leading the league in strikeouts. I mean, he strikes out more than Joey Gallo used to strike out. My goodness, But we want to end on a positive note. We're not going to talk. Yeah.
Well, can I give you the positive note?
Of
This is
course.
his MVP season or his runner up. I think Yelich won that year. Uh, 290 with 34 home runs and 111 RBIs, along with 21 stolen bases. He did strike out 167 times, though.
He strikes out. He strikes out a lot, man. He was just swinging anything. But you can count on him for 30 and 100 for a while there, but no more. I mean, my goodness. What's his stats right now? I don't want to pile on, but what's his stats right now since you have it up?
So he's only played in 80 games. So
Yeah, he
you're
got
right.
benched
He's
a
been
lot.
getting benched a lot.
Yeah.
He's batting 184
Oh my
with
God.
6 home runs, 37 RBIs, 8 stolen bases. And he's got 69 strikeouts. So
There, there are so many players that run through my name. Maybe we add that into a segment, and we're not going to be negative, but we add to a segment because I'm just curious as to what happened to a lot of players. I'm curious with him. What the heck happened? Jason Bay is another one, but just quietly these last few years, there were players that had big years, man. Not long ago that never made a major league roster this year. I'll give you a name, CJ Crone. Not on any team this year. That guy went like 3 or 4 years hitting 30 homers for the Twins, and then I think for Texas or the Angels. And he didn't wind up with anybody this year because he fell off the last few years. There's a few more players like that. And it's probably going to be more going into next year. Of players that were once good, no injuries that we know of, and still not that old, that just fell off. Did you pull up CJ Crone?
I'm Joey Gallo.
Oh, Joey Gallo.
I did have uh, this year with Washington, 62 games. He's batting 160 with 6 home runs, 17 RBIs,
My
and he
God,
has 85 strikeouts.
it's hard to believe. But he's played how many games?
62.
He's playing 60, so he's strictly a bench player. Um, and CJ Crone didn't make a team this year because I think I looked him up, and I don't think he's on any major league roster. You know,
No, I have baseball reference up, so I'll pull him up real quick. Yeah, last year with the Angels, he only played in 15 games.
he
Well, I
dropped.
guess he also played with Colorado.
Go back to his days with
So
the Twins and with maybe early with the Rockies. There wasn't he with the Twins? He had a couple of big years.
yeah, let's see. 2018, he's batting 253, 30 home runs, 74 RBIs.
Yeah,
That was with Tampa.
right.
Uh, 2019, 253 again, 25 homers, 78 RBIs.
Yeah,
Also 125 games, so not a ton.
yeah.
Colorado in 2021, he batted 281, 28 home runs, 92 RBIs. Also didn't make the All Star team. That's odd. I guess probably Alonso there. But 2022 seems like his best year 257, 29, 102 in 150
2
games.
years
Did
ago.
make the All Star team that year, 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago, and this year he's not even on a roster. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'll give you one last name and then we'll wrap up. Jake Lamb. You remember? And he was killing
Oh,
it with the
wow.
time. He he's not on a team this year either. I don't think he was killing it with the Diamondbacks. Couple of
Oh.
big years. Go ahead, read them off.
Yeah, he's in the minors with the Pirates, so that's
He's
bad.
in the minors
Uh,
with the Pirates. Wow. Okay.
all right, so last year he played with the Angels. He only played in 18 games,
Yeah.
216, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs,
Okay.
and 15 strikeouts.
Yeah.
2022, combined with the Dodgers in Seattle, he only played in 41 games, 216, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs.
Well, he's dropped
Let's go
off for a
back
little while. Go back to the Diamondbacks.
to this is his best year, the one year he made an All Star team. This is 2017, 248, 30 home runs, 105 RBIs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a little while ago though. So maybe he's had a fall, but he's not that old, right?
He's 33.
33. He should be in his prime. I mean, I don't understand. We got to dig into this a little bit more. Not to put guys down because just that you made the major leagues is a big accomplishment, right? And the fact that you were a major league all-star, that's a big accomplishment. But then what happened? I'm just really curious what happens with some players. If it wasn't for Javi Baez's contract, he'd be playing here with the Ducks or somebody. There's no way he'd still be in the major leagues because I get the feeling that nobody on the Tigers kind of likes him either because he's always kind of had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he still has that same chip on his shoulder even though he hasn't done anything in a long time, you know. But what happens? I mean, and maybe there's injuries that we don't know about that they just hide from, or maybe there's some psychological, mental stuff too, where you just lose your confidence. That's what I think happened to Jason Bay. It was just he couldn't handle the contract, he couldn't handle New York. We've seen that. That's a whole other different story. We've seen a lot of players that thrived outside of New York and couldn't, pitch here in New York. Kenny Rogers comes to mind. There's been several others, Kenny Rogers was both the Mets and the Yankees, So, all right, let's end on a positive note. So many things to talk about next week. I'm keeping it crossed, man. I think we're gonna be talking about a Jets and a Giants victory next week. How about that?
I'd be very happy. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'll be happy.
All right. Take us home, sir.
All right, this is Kenny Squared End.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next time.